Welcome to episode 7 of the Paradox PT podcast, where we discuss all things physiotherapy, rehabilitation, and clinical practice. Today, I'm speaking with Laura Hubley. Laura wears many hats. She is a manual osteopath, a registered kinesiologist, and part owner of Humana Health in Etobicoke. Today, we discuss her origin story in healthcare, what her osteopathy practice looks like, how to integrate well into an interprofessional clinic, and also how to find sanity and balance as a clinician. It's always fun talking to Laura, and there were some real gems in this conversation. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Laura Hubley. Laura, thanks so much for coming in early and having a chat. I appreciate the time. I know it's crazy getting kids out the door and making it in, so appreciate you taking the time. Why don't we start by just giving the listeners a basic sense of what your current role is, who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
All right. So as you said, my name is Laura. I am one of the partners here at Humana Health. You met the original owner, I believe was your last podcast, Physio Felix. And my role here is a manual osteopath and registered kinesiologist. So not only do I get to be involved in a little bit of the business and management, but I'm also hands-on with all the patients and part of the multidisciplinary team.
Cool. So I thought it'd be helpful to start with kind of your origin story and just what brought you into healthcare in the first place.
Yep.
And yeah, so why don't we start there?
All right. So really quickly growing up, was always active. I was a figure skater, played soccer. I was a swim instructor and lifeguard. So that's kind of where my physical activity side came. And my mother's a nurse. My father was an engineer. So that paints my little business healthcare side of things. And I started off my career going into kinesiology at York. And at that time, you could really do two streams. You could either go through the arts or you could go through the science. And math is not my strong suit, so I kind of gravitated actually a little bit more towards the arts, which I loved. And this is where I got to study really the sociology of health and behaviors and personality. And so I really kind of got to bring in lifestyle into kinesiology. And I've always been influenced by my own emotions, my friends, my surroundings, my parents. And so I really see how lifestyle affects our physical health. So that's really kind of where I started with kinesiology. From there, I practiced as a kinesiologist, which I think was quite rare at the time. A lot of kin grads either went physio or chiro. And because kinesiology wasn't regulated at the time, it was just a profession that a lot of people really didn't know about. I was like, you know what, I'm going to stick with this and I'm going to kind of go forward and see what I can do. And that brought me to a multidisciplinary clinic, which is actually where I met Felix. So this is over 15 years ago now.
What year is that?
I met Felix in 2007, I believe. Okay. Yeah.
So he was a new grad?
He was a new physio grad, and I had been in the kind of the physio PTA world for a couple years by the time I had met him. But really that's who kind of took me under his wing, and I started working really closely with him. And the big emphasis there was really core strengthening. And so I kind of became this core and posture exercise expert, and it was fun and it was great. And from there I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to try big people world, and I'm going to get a desk job and I'm going to get a salary. And so I ventured off and I worked for an independent medical evaluation company. And I read medical or motor vehicle accident reports. And it was great. It wasn't for me at the end of the day, but it really did give me perspective into the other side. I got to speak with a lot of other practitioners like neurologists and dentists and psychologists. So it was a great experience. But ultimately, I had back pain and headaches because I was sitting at a desk all day, and At that time, Gmail chat was a thing.
Okay.
So I was actually chatting with Felix on Gmail chat. I need to come see you. I have all this pain. He's like, no problem. Came in. He's like, what happened? I'm like, well, I sit at a desk all day now. And he's like, you just have to start moving again. And that's pretty much what brought me back into clinical life, was helping Felix out just twice a week with a patient, and then staying afterwards and moving and exercising. And slowly I gravitated back to working at the clinic with Felix. And then at that time it was just physio. We had a massage therapist and myself working out of a gym. And I had a lot of experience on the floor. It was great. I got to kind of expand on that core and posture field that I loved. But then I was kind of reaching a ceiling. So I was burning out. I was starting at 6 a.m. I was ending at close to 8 p.m. I didn't have any restrictions at home. I didn't have any children. I wasn't in a relationship. So I could come and
just burn
myself out, which is pretty much ultimately what I did, because that was the only way I could make more money. You were hourly, and other than maybe bonuses here or there, I had a ceiling. And that's really when I decided to look for a license. So I originally gravitated towards massage therapy. And by this time I was in a relationship with my husband, and we were trying to have children. And I said, if nothing happens, I'm going to apply to massage therapy school. It's a 1-year program. I think we can handle it financially. I can work part-time. We'll just kind of push baby plans aside. And that was the go-to plan. So found the school, gave my deposit, registered for everything. And a week later, we found out we were expecting.
No way. Wow.
That kind of took that whole massage therapy plan out. And that's when I started kind of moving towards osteopathy. So actually Felix is the one who was like, hey, have you heard about this field? And I started doing a little bit of research, and I was able to complete it online, which for me at that time, this was probably a year later. So I had a newborn.
You'd had Riley.
I had Riley. So I had a newborn at home, and I was like, you know what, this is probably the best thing for me right now. So I dove in and I did this online program and went in and did a 2-week practicum, and it was great. I learned a bunch of hands-on techniques, and here I am, manual osteopath.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you never really could have predicted ending up there, starting from the kin degree at York. It was...
No. But even in my kin degree, I was always doing extra certification. So I did soft tissue, I did a pre and postnatal certification, working with seniors. I did all these extra add-ons, but because kinesiology just wasn't recognized the way the other therapies were, they were great on a resume and they looked nice, but they really weren't getting me any further in terms of my career or income. So really the next step was to kind of push towards getting a license and taking my practice kind of to the next level. Yeah.
And so for somebody who isn't familiar with osteopathy, they've heard the word in passing, but they have no idea what it is relative to massage, chiro, physio. What's your elevator pitch as to what it is?
So my elevator pitch for my practice, because osteopathy is a regulated term and it's very different throughout the world. So we have osteopathic practitioners in Europe and in the United States, which are basically medical doctors, and they're prescribing and writing diagnosis, and even in some cases performing surgeries and whatnot. Right. Not the case, obviously, here in Canada. So we are called manual osteopaths, and that is my approach, is very manual. And my elevator pitch, so to speak, is to try and create as much relationship between structure and function, so that you can go out and do whatever activity or movement that you need to be doing. So trying to bring that body back into its most neutral position to allow it to self-heal, self-regulate, and kind of get back into its track that it should be in.
And has your practice like taken a lot of twists and turns since you got the since you were trained in osteopathy. Have you had any big shifts in like the underlying framework of what guides your decision making, or have you been kind of like, when you took the course, this makes sense, cool, I'm going to practice this way?
Yeah.
Or have you found things like evolve a lot along the way? I'm just
They've
curious.
definitely evolved, especially during COVID as well. So what I've really noticed is what I would refer to as barriers to the physical, and that's our nervous system. And people just coming in and they are so wired and so fired, and that's often even a barrier out on the gym floor. Someone might just be talking nonstop too, that they're either not listening to the instruction, they're not doing the exercise, they're obviously distracted and doing something else, even though they have the best of intentions of coming in here to fix their shoulder or their knee or whatnot. But I've really noticed that trying to calm that system and let people feel that they have availability and movement without having to almost do it themselves. There's a lot of guarding, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of pain thought. And so if I can kind of take that shoulder through a range of motion for you, it translates out onto the gym floor a lot better, because we've kind of eliminated that pain thought or that guarding or that just that nervousness even that a lot of people have coming in here.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because there's so much debate these days online about manual therapy versus exercise and all this stuff, but I guess the thing I like about your practice is ultimately it's always driving towards facilitating independence and getting somebody back to doing what they want to do, and there are many roads to Rome to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and also one of the interesting things we see in the research is that consistently when we ask patients what they actually want from a practitioner, therapeutic touch is one of the consistently mentioned elements that patients value.
Yeah.
And so, like, you're so right. If you put that person's shoulder through a range of motion where your hands are there, giving them that sense of safety, like that might give them permission to then be able to do it themselves. So I think we often dichotomize this. Well, if it's manual therapy, it's not empowering the patient.
Yeah.
But I don't think it needs to be that binary distinction.
It's very much, I mean, even if you look at the body, I know we were kind of touching on this yesterday in conversation, but we're just a network of so many different levers, slings, communication pathways and whatnot, and you kind of have to tackle all of those if we want to get to a common goal. So, that kind of cliche comparison of body to car, right? At the end of the day, the car is meant to drive, right? It's not meant to just sit in a lot. It's meant to transport. It can go to a body shop and we can do oil changes and tire rotation. So there is manual work that needs to go into that vehicle. But the ultimate goal is to get that car driving and moving. So I'm very much supplementing movement. Yeah.
And I think, that's what's so great about the clinic here at Umana is that we have something for everybody, depending on where they are in their kind of pathway towards independence.
Yeah.
And if somebody, like, I have clients where they're just so wired and jacked up, and like the issue is probably more of a central nervous system issue, in terms of they're just sensitized, they're stressed.
Yeah.
And sometimes hands-on work is a better way to wind that down. And I'm like, it's not what I specialize in, but that's why we have people here who do that.
Exactly.
So, whereas when somebody comes in, they're like, okay, I want to tweak my deadlift, then you send them out there. But when somebody's like, I really need to wind down, like, Laura is the person for that.
Yeah. So, and I think you're right. Like, I love touch. I've always loved touch. I've always said, even when I've worked with practitioners and they've come to, pinpoint where I need to work on a patient, I'm always like, oh, where's that point again? Like, everyone kind of loves that touch. And so that's also why I gravitated to osteopathy, was what I like as a person as well. I love being out on the gym floor and movement, but I also just love that calmness of being put through movement when I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, 100%.
It's very calming.
It is, yeah.
Right?
And like we're recording this in your treatment room, which just has such a lovely vibe. Like it's so relaxing. We really need to deck out the physio room in a more.
You need some more Hygge.
Need some more Hygge. Why don't you tell us what the Hygge is? This would
so
be
a friend of mine gave me this book. It's the Little Book of Hygge, and it's based on kind of the Danish way of living, and they're kind of the happiest people. And it's creating calmness and just awareness. And so even in here, little caves of light, there's usually just music, there's plants in here, but it's a safe place, I think, and that's the environment that I like to kind of give off is when people come in here. It is a safe place to vent, to let go. Everything that happens in here stays in here. So oftentimes this is a place that people can just kind of unwind and unleash also. And some of the stuff we talk about is definitely maybe beyond scope of practice that I can offer any therapeutic advice or help. But sometimes just being able to talk to an unbiased person or let it all out is really therapeutic. Yeah. And then when I do send them out of here, they can focus on what they're doing on the gym floor or with another practitioner because they've kind of let it out here. So it's all steps to a big picture. Yeah.
And I think it's like we were talking about this earlier, but it's such an important point that we forget what it's like to go into a medical office as somebody who doesn't do that on a daily basis. Like I come in, I sit down at my desk, somebody comes in for an assessment, they've gotten in their car, they've driven to like this building that they had to find. Yeah. They come in, they have to like talk to this new person, and then you want to make them feel as comfortable as possible to let their guard down, because ultimately we know that's critical to allow somebody to open up. Yeah. And then if we're trying to do an intervention, if they're stressed and they're just worried about like, oh my goodness, this is all these horrible lights and it's those kind of those contextual factors around what we do, independent of what the actual treatment is. Yeah. Just how comfortable does somebody feel in the environment?
And those are things critical. we can kind of, play with their sensory system as soon as they walk in here. Mm-hmm. So whether that's lighting or plants or, we have really nice wood doors which just create calmness in themselves. You can create that calmness and kind of calm the nervous system even just through environmental and ambiance and and it's so interesting how every medical office, like going to like a walk-in clinic, they all tend to look exactly the same, and you just feel like you want to get out of there as soon as you possibly can. Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's not a place you want to spend time, and like that's exactly what it is. It's sick care, right? You go in, you're sick, you kind of get what you need to do, and you leave. And this is, I don't know, I've always kind of viewed multidisciplinary as healthcare and maintenance, preventative. Rehab, treatment, and so there's a space for kind of treating everything, mind, body, spirit, soul, within a multidisciplinary clinic.
Right. So maybe this is a good segue to talk a little bit about the nuances and challenges and benefits of having a multidisciplinary clinic, because for me, if I were to work in a practice where everybody was like me, carbon copies of Leo, it provides some benefits because we're on the same page in terms of what we know and our background and our training and the lens through which we view patients. But it also kind of blinds me to maybe areas that I'm not equipped to deal with as well. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll ask you, like, have there been challenges to working with individuals of totally diverse skill sets that you've come across? Or has it all been positive?
I wouldn't say like diverse skill sets, but I think it really comes down to just the personality and that team approach, and trusting your practitioners. And I think understanding that it is very multi-level. Someone could be coming in, let's say, with a shoulder complaint. But if we find something else along the way that's also restricting that shoulder, or it might not even be on our radar if we're only having one practitioner look at it. Mm-hmm. So I think there is benefit to having everybody in, but you have to be open as well to kind of looking at the big picture, because the body's a big picture.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, I wouldn't say skill set, but if you are a practitioner that does kind of like to work independently, I don't know if that's the best approach here.
Yeah, for sure.
Because our bodies are not like that.
Yeah, and like, to be candid, I wasn't sure. I'm kind of a lone wolf type of person in a sense, and when I first started here and you guys were like going on about this like interdisciplinary thing and how we're always referring back and forth, and I was like, okay, like maybe this could work, but you know, I very much like to just have my own view of things, and I wasn't sure how it would go, honestly, but it's been so nice because I never feel like I'm treating on an island. Like if I have a tough case, there's always somebody that I can say, you know what, let's send you over to Laura or Jason or Dr. John and get a second set of eyes on this. And I think you have to kind of drop the ego that you have to be the best person for everyone. Like we have this idea, or at least I did when I graduated, that you have to kind of be all things to all people and be the expert in, you know, sports injuries and also postpartum and also, you know, like whiplash and headache and do you know what I mean? Like you don't have to be an expert in all things. You just have to know. I think you have to be self-aware as to what your strengths are. Yes. And then you can work well within a team. And that's what I've found here is like I just like I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been so good.
If you go back a couple of months ago, we had a staff meeting and I brought that puzzle out. And that was based on a book I had read, It's Not How But Who. And there's that old kind of cliche saying, like, one of the most important things is to know what you don't know. And that's really important here because I don't know everything. I don't know physiotherapy, massage therapy, chiropractic. That's not my discipline. Do I know when to pass off and to refer? For the most part, yes. But that puzzle analogy is really what we are as a multidisciplinary team, is we're all going to come to finish this big picture. And we might not also be just treating one thing. Patients might open up to practitioners about different areas. We might stumble upon different things as we're treating. You know, sometimes I get people in here and it's like, are you clenching? Are you really grinding your teeth lately? Oh, I didn't even notice I was doing this. So it really kind of opens the box to full body treatment, which at the end of the day is how that shoulder or that knee or that hip or that back is going to work. Yeah. And, you know, I think that when we think about that kind of holistic aspect of things, there is the danger of drawing relations that don't exist, like, oh, your back pain is due to your ankle or whatever. But so, like, you know, because in school there was always this idea that you got to look above and below the injury. Makes sense. Right? And as practitioners, that is important. But at the same time, like for me, I'm always thinking, I'm going to look at your knee if your knee hurts. But like, you know, we can address other stuff. Like your knee doesn't exist in a vacuum. Right. And that's where getting people's opinions on these things and being able to have candid discussions about it, even if you have different lenses, I guess, is helpful because, you know, we're blind to our own biases by definition, right? Absolutely. So yeah, you got to have that community to bounce ideas off of. For sure, and you learn off one another, which is the most important, I think. Like if you are kind of working in that lone wolf type of mentality, like you don't have, like, we have mentors everywhere. Like that's how I view this whole team, is we're all mentors to one another, and it's wonderful because you don't know something, someone else might, or they're going to help you figure it out, or you're going to figure it out together. You know, and that's what's really exciting sometimes when you get these complex cases and we get to kind of tackle it as a team, and you know, you get to see patients progress and kind of tackle a lot of the issues that they came in with. Yeah, and if I could give a piece of advice to any like new grad physio who's listening, the sooner that you can get comfortable having conversations where you can be like you're comfortable showing where your knowledge gaps are with other practitioners, the better, right? Because that's an opportunity to learn.
if nothing else, it just keeps you aware of whether you're the right person to be seeing somebody.
Yeah.
You don't have to be for every single person.
Right. No,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
So, like at first, even with like our chiropractor, Dr. John, you'd get these little pieces of anxiety that would creep in when you're having these conversations. Like, what's he thinking about my impression about this patient? Am I totally off base? But
yeah,
like, the quicker you can get used to having those conversations, the better you'll get at them.
For sure. And I mean, you have to keep in the back of your head, like when you do an assessment on a patient, and I do it the next day, and Dr. John does it the next day, we're seeing that person on 3 different days. Yeah. They're going to also relate to us in 3 different ways. So we're going to have 3 different impressions. Mm-hmm. A lot of that is going to overlap, and we're going to have a lot of probably similar findings, but it's also the way we approach it and what we're looking at from a physio, massage, chiro, osteo perspective. So... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, even if 5 different physios would probably have 5 different impressions
exactly.
for a patient.
Exactly.
Which is, part of me feels is like, I wish we had a standard of care to some degree.
Yeah.
But then also, there are many roads to Rome, and we have lots of options, and we treat people. So it's, I don't think it's as black and white as we'd like to think when we're in school. It's like there's one right answer for how to get somebody better, right?
Yeah.
We don't really understand what the mediators to recovery are.
Right.
And a lot of them are maybe more psychological than we thought.
Yep.
A lot of really fascinating research coming out on people getting better from, say, shoulder pain, but not actually getting stronger in terms of force output when they measure that variable. And it's like, what happened there? Well, it was the act of strengthening might have improved their self-efficacy, their confidence, their sense of security and safety in the shoulder. Yeah. Was it the force output that we added? Well, no, not always.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So we got to be humble about...
Yes, I agree.
About why what we do works and how it works.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So why don't we pivot to another topic that we've been discussing a bit over the last couple of weeks, and that's how to stay like moderately sane as a clinician, because we have a tough job. Like we're for 7 to 10 hours a day, whatever it is, people are pouring out really vulnerable pieces of their life to us, and it can weigh on you if you get like multiple patients per day that break out into tears, and just the level of attention that requires can really weigh on you as a practitioner. What strategy, like how do you stay sane, or do you stay sane as somebody who works as a clinician?
I like organized chaos to describe my life. But my social media handle's Balanced by Laura, and it's really about trying to live a balanced life, because life is good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, there's going to be days that you're just not in the mood. Sometimes you just wake up in a bad mood, and that's how you feel. There's days you come in where we're booked solid with patients. There's other days where your schedule is completely empty. So I think it's taking advantage of those valleys, and whether that's self-care, whether that's reflecting on how to get back up, whether it's patient recall, whether it's just sitting and having a conversation similar to this, whatever it's going to take to kind of light that fire to get you back up. But I do think we need those downtimes. I like transition. I like change. I think that's how our bodies work. We're always adapting. We're always changing. The best posture is your next posture. So we should never be kind of stagnant anyways, right? We need to constantly be adapting and reflecting, because if you were busy all the time, what would you be reflecting on? Like life would probably be quite boring, I would think.
Yeah. No, and I agree. It's tough though, like those slow months, like January, February, which are typically the slow times for us. It's difficult not to just feel anxiety and dread, and whether that's related to finances or whatever it is. It's a real skill, I guess, to be able to leverage that in a positive way. Yeah. And use that time to recharge and like restore your battery.
It is. And I think healthcare practitioners are a certain breed, because when we are in that kind of lull, I still don't think the practitioners I've worked with, that the focus is on us. Like, I'm not busy. Like, of course, finances is in the back of my head, but now we're like, okay, how do we get patients back in? Who haven't I seen? Who's fallen off the treatment plan? What program can we put out there to the community to get people in? How can we promote wellness? Like, we're still always about the community or about the patient, which I think is probably the biggest thing working against therapists, is we're always out for everybody else. And I don't think we give ourselves enough self-care, and I don't think we all practice what we preach for the most part. And that's when you do get kind of the burnout and whatnot. So kind of going back to your question, what do? I come in here at 5:30 in the morning. It's the only time I have to myself. It's quiet, the coffee's hot, but it's my 45 minutes just to either work out or reflect on the day, or just whatever I need to get through that 10-hour day that we work.
Now, what time do you go to bed when you get up at 5:30?
I'm in bed like between 9 and 10.
Okay.
Easily.
Yeah. So clearly you need less sleep than I do.
Yeah.
For me, if I was to get in here at 5:30, I think I'd be like an absolute zombie by noon, but hey, we're all wired a little differently.
Yeah, I think having kids, just like you get used to the sleep deprivation, it just kind of becomes a little bit of a norm.
True. That
you can function on just a little bit less. But yeah, my days in the morning, it's hard. If I have to go out at night, it's kind of a mission too. So it's really just where you want that chunk of day. So mine just happens to kind of be that early shift.
Yeah.
But that's what I have to do to create balance in my life, because I'm not going to do it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think everybody's different, but like one of the things that is key that you pointed out is that like we're always focused on our patients, and like for me personally, if I can do something that's totally unrelated to physio, like once a day, whether it's in the evening, like whatever it is, just something where I'm not, because I'm like a compulsive continuing education junkie. Like I'm always reading and taking courses.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy to sustain that, like that same pace for a full year. Like you said, you need times where you check out, and whether that looks like waking up early and just having time to yourself here, or like
your brain's got to go down another pathway. Those nerves have to fire in a different way, because nerves that fire together wire together, or wire together fire together. But we have to keep kind of creating change and transition to keep us sane, or else, I don't know, I just feel like you'd kind of go down a rabbit hole, and
your patients suffer for it, because like what I've found is, like let's say I have somebody coming in, new patient, condition that I don't know a ton about, right? Am I better off to spend the night before cramming, researching everything I can about that condition? Or am I better off just like having a good sleep and going for a walk in the morning and like feeling like a human when they see me? Yeah. Like I found that honestly, regardless of your knowledge base, if you're mentally not present because you haven't taken care of yourself, I'm useless to the patient. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's everything. Managing your energy is just like, it's half the battle.
Yeah, and you think, okay, so for example, that patient comes in and they're so, I don't know, wired and flustered, pain, like maybe they just need to go for a walk. And maybe that's a great little piece of advice, because I think the more we even experience as people make us better practitioners. A little bit of tidbit information I always kind of give my patients is, when it comes to bed sleeping, I tend to sleep on the same side of the bed all the time. If I go to a hotel though, I'll sleep on the other side of the bed. I tend to sleep on the side, I guess, closest to the door or to the bathroom. And so now with my husband, I make us switch sides of the bed every daylight savings. Just so I sleep on a different side, because it's not that I'm more comfortable on my right side. It's just that's the way the door is. And so, we think about prolonged sitting or prolonged standing, or people flip their mattresses all the time. I'm like, let's just switch it up. Like, sleep on the other side of the bed. Like, let's change your body up.
Balanced by Laura.
Exactly. That's what it is. But when you practice these little things in life too, that you kind of like, oh my goodness, something as simple as switching the sides of the bed or carrying my purse on another side versus my right side, or, trying to sit straight and not cross my legs. These are all little things that kind of add up, and they start to make a difference.
It's so interesting how easy it is to forget about the basics.
Yeah.
Like, somebody comes in with knee pain and we're asking them about their sporting history, whatever. Sometimes it's like the patient will say in passing, like on the second appointment, oh, well, I always like sit with my knee in this crazy position.
Yeah.
It kind of hurts when I do that. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, here I am like strengthening all these areas. Like, just don't sit like that.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we need to,
a lot of the time
basics,
it is what
right?
we're doing. And I've used this analogy for years, but I said, if every time we do something kind of detrimental on the body, and we have a jar and you put a jelly bean in that jar, like, we're really not going to notice until that jar is now overflowing. So you could be putting jelly beans in that jar for 30 years, and finally that last one that makes it overflow is like, oh man, and all of a sudden I bent over to put my sock on and my back threw out. Well, that's not what happened, because we have 30 years of kind of all of this pattern that we've done that now we have to kind of unwind.
But it's tricky, because there are people that can just keep throwing jelly beans in the jar and it never overflows. So
True.
That's the issue.
Yeah,
they're
leaking out the bottom at the same time.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting, because I said, just as much as we kind of add on and get to an issue, we need to now kind of take away as well, right? So if we can do these little changes daily, they're going to make a difference just as much as sitting poorly for all of this time added up. So.
Yeah, I mean, I had a patient recently with back pain who, like, we tried a lot of biomechanical interventions and trying to get her to change positions more often throughout the day, and we'd done some manual stuff, and we'd thrown a lot at it. And ultimately what we decided was, like, our next treatment strategy was, before work, she was just going to get up and, like, just open the door and, like, look outside and just get some blue light in the morning.
Yeah.
Go maybe just get a tiny bit of movement.
Yeah.
Like, simple things like this, like we're not that different from plants, Like, we need basic conditions. We need light. We need food.
Exactly.
We need social
Sunlight.
interaction.
Yeah. We need to be upright. We need to be extended. We need to be able to see things.
Or we need variability in our movement, and like, taking the holistic view of the person. You can't, like, we often are so myopic about, oh, well, your tibia is not rotating X amount of degrees. Well, it's like, do you go outside at all during your work week?
Yeah, right.
Like, when's the last time you talked to a friend or did anything fun?
Yeah, it's
like,
so
these
true.
things can be treatment.
Yeah.
And stuff that we chart about, even though we're trained to just focus on these biomechanical minutiae.
Yeah, and you can still focus on those, but you need to know what's affecting it, right?
Yeah.
So, like, one question I always ask is, how's your mood? And that's kind of like an overloaded question right now.
Yeah.
And some people are like, it sucks. It's horrible. Like, I can't find any motivation to do this, and this. And then you're like, well, no wonder, like, you're also in discomfort and pain, because if you can't find motivation to even come to exercise, but then also your system's firing, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously you're going to be in pain.
Yeah. And when we talk about mood, like, one of my favorite examples is people who, say, have pain, like, throughout the day, but then they can go out dancing and, like, the DJ's, like, spinning, they're having a good time, endorphins are flowing. Oh, my knee was fine, actually. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in the gym, when I'm thinking about how my knees are working when I'm squatting, oh, it hurts. But I can be like,
exactly,
crushing it on the dance floor and feeling just fine.
So that's exactly what I mean, is it's not black and white. It's not knee pain, this treatment. It's you've got to kind of look at the whole picture. And why are they even complaining about knee pain when they're in the gym then? Yeah. That's a whole other topic. Maybe it's just, pain thought, and it's all neuroplasticity, and just my knee hurts because I walked in those doors. Yeah,
and we know people get hypervigilant on their pain, and it's one of my favorite examples again is, like, playing sports. When you're winning, the treatment room's way less full after the game. Yeah. Right? Like, if you just won a championship, I can't even feel my sprained ankle, which is, like, otherwise would be an 8 out of 10 pain. But if you just lost, it's like, okay, those negative emotions kind of drive that.
You need reason to
sensitivity
have
and
those. Like people want to have like a reason or justification for negative feelings, or I lost because I wasn't up to par because my calf was tight. There's got to be kind of an explanation. People don't like to be disappointed.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right?
Yeah. Got to keep the big picture in mind, I guess, is what I always have to remind myself.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And what's the big picture for that patient?
Yeah.
Right? If it's...
And I guess if you ask them, they'll usually tell you.
Yeah.
But if you just focus on their specific, issue, maybe they won't. So maybe it's as simple as just having that lens to allow them to, tell you, what are we actually doing here? What are we working towards?
Exactly.
Like, why? It's not just your knee pain, but it's like, oh, well, I can't do X because of my knee pain.
Right.
I can't kneel on the floor and play with my grandkid. Or,
right.
Like
what
uncovering
activities
that.
And that's kind of, I feel like that's where we really connect with our patients, is when we find out that their like daily life is being affected. It's kind of a different approach for me anyways, with, let's say, athletics, because when I hear someone can't, garden or has difficulty even just putting groceries away, like that just speaks differently to me than an athlete who can still perform at a high level, but we're dealing with a little injury here. But those are the patients that I really relate to as well. And you've done a great job as well, being able to kind of really be empathetic with these patients and just acknowledge. I think people just want acknowledgement. We can't fix everything. We're not miracle workers, but I'm going to acknowledge that you're in a lot of pain, and that goes a long way with people.
No, it does. It's interesting. Like when I was in school, in PT school, in that world, treating athletes is really glorified as getting to the top of the mountain, like being a sports physiotherapist on a pro team. And, while that's really interesting and there's a lot of technical skill that's involved, I personally find it more fulfilling almost to work with that person with chronic low back pain, or that person with NEOA, who just can't do the basics. Yeah. Because there's just so much low-hanging fruit there where
there is, and you're also working with a very different person, because an athlete is going to be very, I would think, compliant, and they're going to work with you because they really want to get better, where you have a lot of other barriers with someone with all those low-hanging fruit, because it seems easy, but it's very difficult for these people. So finding a way to get them to reach that low-hanging fruit is sometimes really satisfying when you can do it. And it might be very, low level, and it might be just a small baby step, but that baby step is, I don't know, such a huge accomplishment versus maybe an athlete.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, no, it seems simple, I guess, to say like, okay, our goal is we're going to walk 10 minutes a day instead of 5 for this week. But that's such a huge win for that person's overall health and their future health. And when you think about our healthcare system, it's like, think of the falls that we're preventing and the strain on our system. So, and just the suffering for those people. Whereas, I mean, I was an athlete, you get banged up, like it's whatever. Yeah. Like, but that matters too, but
it's a different lifestyle. And that's really the clientele we have here, people who want to better their life. Like, of course, we've got the athletes in here as well, but I love that we have a population of people who just want to take care of their bodies from every perspective, whether it's a want perspective or a need perspective, right? But it's they're coming in here looking for wellness for their body, and I think we're kind of that body shop, right? You kind of compare. I know you guys talked with Felix about a tune-up. And that is what people come here for. We're kind of a body shop for your body, to make sure it's gonna hang out with you for as long as possible, right?
Yeah, I know you're stuck with it.
You're stuck with it.
As far as we know.
And if we can prevent exactly all of these falls and overloading the medical system and whatnot.
Well, and the crazy beliefs people come in here with, where sometimes somebody comes in for an assessment and they're so scared to move, and all I need to say is, it's fine. Like, get after it. And then they're good to go. And sometimes it's that simple, but the impact on that person's life, like, can be huge.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it's very satisfying as a therapist knowing we have this impact on our clientele, which just goes way beyond just physical.
Yeah. Well, that seems like a good place to maybe stop. I have a client coming in like 2 minutes. So,
all right.
Anything else you want to add? Anywhere that people can find you online if they're curious?
Yeah, I'm Balanced by Laura on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You'll find me on the Humana Health website. And I think that's about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Leo. This was great.
Thank you so much for listening to the Paradox PT podcast. As Laura mentioned, her Instagram handle is @balancedbylaura, and you can reach me on Instagram @leophysio, as I'm competing with these birds that are aggressively chirping right now. Spring has sprung. As always, thank you for listening, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. We will see you on the next one.